Hello, everybody. How you doing today? This is Sakoni Prince of SakoniPrince.com, where we make motivation personal by introducing you to yourself. And I want to welcome you to another episode of the H.E.A.L podcast. H.E.A.L is an acronym for Help, Elevate, and Learn, and the subtitle to my book, which is a guide to healing your inner child. I am so excited because I get the chance to share these podcasts with you, and we have our special guest, which I can't wait for you to see her in a minute. But we do have to thank our sponsor, none other than BetterHelp.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SakoniPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable. It is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SakoniPrinceHeal or choose Sakoni Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
And again, we want to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring our podcast. There's nothing like having somebody that you can talk to. So with that being said, I do want to bring up our guest, none other than my good friend, lifestyle coach, Miss Teri Moore. Teri, are you there?
I am. I'm here, Sakoni. Mr. Prince, how are you?
I am
And
well.
hello, everybody out there, all the audience participants, and everyone that's chiming in today. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate each and every one of you for jumping on and watching the replay.
Okay, Teri, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, where do I begin? Well, I am love, compassion, care, and consideration. I'm an extremely humane human to humans. So I can say that in who I am. And then some of what I do, I am an experienced coach, have been for quite some time, and just doing what I'm able to do to use my personal experiences to help others get through their life journey of healing, transformation, and next level, just next leveling your life. Let's just work on things like that. So I also work with an advertising agency, so I'm in the marketing world and helping individuals, entrepreneurs, and businesses to scale, and work with an event company as well, so live and virtual events. So I'm happy to say that I'm a productive entrepreneur with individuals that I work with in all areas of business. So there
That
you
is
have it.
amazing. That is amazing. Well, listen, I know that we talked about, going over some of these questions, and I know at some point we're going to go through an exercise, but I do want to start off, I want to start off just really driving the fact to focus on, because, like I tell people oftentimes, this podcast is not meant to end the conversation, but it's meant to start the conversation around inner child trauma, inner child wounds, but more importantly, inner child healing. So
Yes.
getting to the questions that we have listed, in your professional opinion, how important is inner child healing?
Well, it's important because your inner child is you. So
Okay.
the fact that you as an adult are having to adulting is difficult. You have to
Right.
consider all of the facets of you and how productive you're going to be as an adult in society for your friends, family, if you're an entrepreneur, your customer base, anyone that you're interacting with. So
Hmm.
whoever it is that's in your circle depends on you to be your best you and show up every day as the best version of yourself. And in order for you to do that, you've got to be able to have moments where you do the deep dive and heal your wounds. And a lot of those wounds go back to childhood. Unbeknownst to us, some of those wounds are happening, through experiences as well as observation just in life. And working with your inner child is definitely a way to be able to integrate, accept, and love you to the fullest in order to open up the room in your life to include others and show up for them as the better
Right.
version of themselves.
Right. So, in order for us to be, as you said, the better version of ourselves, we have to include our whole self. I think a
Yes,
lot of people, I think a lot of people, they don't really, they haven't incorporated that part of them. A lot of people have just tried to leave it, forget it. That was in the past, that was behind me, but it's still showing up in their everyday life. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to, in fact, not only write the book, but have the podcast to help raise the awareness that until you've done the work to heal any kind of trauma or any kind of wounds that you had, they are still there, just below the surface, waiting to be triggered.
that's right. You're correct. Triggering happens. It's a subconscious thing. It isn't something that we decide is going to happen in the moment when
Right.
something arises. And it can be from it can be as it could be subconscious in the level of hearing certain sounds. It could be certain things that you smell, things that they don't have to be triggers because someone is involved with
Mhm.
you or an interaction with you. They can just
Right.
happen just walking day to day in your life. And so having having done the work for yourself in understanding all parts of yourself, actually accepting all parts of yourself, that's actually what love is for you to you. And a
Right.
lot of people have a difficulty accepting love as well as giving love in a way that communicates, healthy emotional and mental states because they themselves may not have fully accepted all parts and
Mm-hmm.
integrated all parts of themselves into themselves and
Mm-hmm.
being whole as possible. And so that makes love exchanges difficult and it makes adulting more of a challenge. So
Right. Right.
understanding
So,
you helps you
hmm
understand and identify triggers, which you can give yourself grace when those show up to be able to
right.
walk through in those moments, as
Right.
well as
Right.
letting the person know, hey, this is what's happening to me right now based on this, or I just experienced this, and now I'm feeling an emotional, something in my body, and I just want to make you aware. A lot of times, if you have an idea, you can at least put the people around you on a little bit of a disclaimer that it's happening, and you may have support right in that moment if they know. If you
Right.
don't do the work on yourself, you don't allow yourself that room to see the parts of you that have been wounded, acknowledge those parts of you that are wounded, then you yourself aren't even going to know what's going on. In the moment that it's happening, it's just happening. And you're reacting instead of responding. And reaction
Right.
is emotional, response is logic and rational based, which
Right.
logic and reason goes out the window during trauma and during trigger related situations when trauma situations show up as triggers later in life.
hmm I was thinking about that very thing, and it brings us to the next question when it says, in your professional opinion, when should someone start inner child work?
Oh, see, that's yeah, everybody's journey is different.
Right.
So when you recognize that when you recognize you want to be better, whenever that may be,
Okay.
and there isn't there's not a time frame to that, there's not an age period to that, there's not a number
Right.
associated to that. It's just when you know that the things that are happening in your life are not going in the way that maybe you want them to go, or that you seem to run into the same situations, they just have different
Right.
faces, different places
Right.
attached to them, and you're
Right.
in different
Right.
spaces, different
Yeah.
faces, and different places. Although the repetitiveness of those situations show up. So it's just, when you reach a point to say enough is enough, the hurt is too much,
Right.
I
It's,
could be better, then you
it,
start the work. So, and
it's
then
so
like you were just saying, you thought about that recently as far as traumas and triggers are related.
mm,
Can I ask, are you comfortable sharing what your thoughts were with that? I know you led into the next question, but what were your thoughts on that when you were thinking about those traumas and triggers?
well. I actually came up with a worksheet where I talked about the trigger, the trauma, the reaction, and the response. Because you don't really know that there's a trauma there until it's triggered. Until something happens which causes you to go above and beyond what a normal average person would do. So the trigger, although it doesn't happen first, it's the thing that points to the trauma. So the trigger happens, which reveals the trauma, and then you have a reaction. But like you said, the reaction is an emotional reaction versus a logical, in fact, response. If you're not satisfied with the reaction, in fact, the next step is okay. So what do I want my response to be? And one of the things I've learned through my own journey, through my own healing journey, and even through my own therapy, is that it takes an intentional process to reframe your your reaction to a response. Because normally when something happens, you just want to respond, or I should say, react to it. But if you're like, okay, I don't want this to be my reaction, I want to have this response. It takes, it's almost like muscle memory. It takes a
Yeah.
time to reprogram yourself in order to have the response that you want. And most of the time, that means taking a break, or being in the moment, but not moving, but reframing and redirecting ourselves.
Yes, correct. Yes, I agree with you with that. In that once you identify when the triggering happens in whatever
Mhm.
situation, then if you're in a place where you decide, I'm going to actually face this, I'm actually going to do the work in this moment, or you start to recognize that this may be something you want to work on, then you identify the trauma. And then once you identify the trauma, you can then go back to, okay, this is how I was reacting. There's
Right,
a reaction, which is just emotional. Usually there's no thought behind it. It's just happens just like that. You go into action mode because it's reaction. You go into action mode, and then
right,
afterwards you sit in that and go, oh, there may be consequences from that. There could be rewards from that. Either way, and so whatever shows up after that is the moment. Then you can say, okay, do I want to continue having reactions to this situation, or do I want to start working on a way to cope in the moment, and then work towards releasing that and replacing it with a response. And so
right.
then that way you can be more productive, and you're opening up more room for yourself to grow, and thus healing happens. Yes. So, thank you for sharing that, because I was curious about what you said when you said you were thinking about that. You had a thought
Right,
about that. So, I
right.
appreciate that. And I'm sure that worksheet is going to be phenomenal when,
Yes,
it's a phenomenal tool to be able to help walk somebody through, because that's
right.
sometimes a challenge is when you're talking with somebody and they really don't have an idea of what that looks like in
Hmm.
identifying what a trauma actually does to you psychologically, and how it works on you subconsciously, and how your subconscious continues to use that trauma to as a way to protect against future situations that will hurt you. Our subconscious is here to protect us, and that's the
Right,
reason why, the when you have a situation show up, and it releases all of those brain chemicals and hormones that say, hey, we need to run from this situation, we need to face and fight this situation, or we need to, find a way out, right? And
right,
the fight,
right,
flight, fright, you go through fright, and then you decide if you're going to fight or flight. It's
right.
that. And that's our subconscious allowing us an opportunity to be protected, doing its
Hmm.
job to protect. And we have to uninstall programming, which also includes if there's a trauma that ends up being deep rooted into you, you have to find a way to remove that. It's like, you
Right,
take that out of your system. And so then that way your nervous system can, recalibrate and go back to
right,
a regular state instead of a high alert state, which
right.
is,
I was sharing, in fact, with our guest last week about, I have an example about that, and that is the storage unit. In fact, that's behind our house. I'm in the process of tearing it down so we can put up another building. And while I was doing that, it's like God helped me to understand that you can't put up the new building until the old one is torn down. And so that's just what you said. There are some things that we have to dismantle in our life, and it takes work. It's not going to be a pill or something quick, but it takes work for us to actually go in there and actually to take out and to uproot. To first of all, see, can this be saved? Is this salvageable? And if it's not, okay, then it's not serving me anymore. It's not doing me any good. I need to get rid of it so I can make room for something else. And sometimes we're so, in fact, nostalgic about how a situation is going, or how we've reacted so much in the past and how it served us, that we find ourselves not really allowing that level of growth to occur. But real quick, Faye, we got a couple of comments here from Marv. She chimed in. She said, "Give grace to others, give grace to ourselves and to others." That is so true. We have to be willing to actually not only give the same grace to other people, because some of us will give grace to other people, but rarely give it to ourselves, or we'll give grace to ourselves and rarely other people. But we have to have an equal distribution. We have to be willing to do that with the people. We have another comment. Oh, this is Dr. LaDonya Yvette. She said, "Awesome. Hey, Terry." So she was speaking to you as well. Good
oh,
to have.
thank
All
you for
right.
hopping. Yes, it is oftentimes individuals that have had childhood situations that cause the not enoughness or
Mm.
the
Is that a
or
word,
the
or did you make that up? Not enoughness.
not enoughness. I'm not sure. I'll coin it right now. Not enoughness. So the
There you
whole
go.
I am enough movement, just it's
Hmm.
just recognizing that you're whole from birth. It doesn't matter. Situations show up
Right.
and they may, bend you a bit, but if you don't allow them to break you, you remain whole and
Hmm.
you are enough and you are worthy. And that's a situation that is a common thread in a lot of individuals that turns into being an extreme giver, and you'll give grace to other people much sooner than you will to yourself. You'll give compliments to other people and have a difficulty accepting a compliment for yourself. You'll be able to even go as far as to say yes to situations that well, me saying this and stretching will probably hurt me. However, I want to make sure this other person is okay. And that is in that area of lending grace outside of yourself rather than
Hmm.
to yourself. That all works together. And like when you said the triggers and then going back and identifying traumas, you're being able to identify traumas. It's so important to your healing journey. And then that takes me to one exercise that was extremely fundamental to me, and it brought so much of an aha moment, and that was the exercise I wanted to do, which is to actually tap into your inner child and to actually have a conversation with your inner child. And so it's like
Hmm.
if I wanted to ask you, just name one limiting situation or limiting belief, or the one thing that you identify as a childhood trauma, or something that you've carried into adulthood that stemmed from your childhood. It could be you know abandonment issues. It could be um,
Well, I do have
feeling.
one. I do have one that does come to mind, uh,
Okay.
and I've shared this in a couple of therapy sessions, and one was an opportunity, to actually help, and it was my mother. Actually, she was coming to our car. I was sitting in the front seat. I was probably a teenager or so, and she had a box in her hand. And the car we had was a Grand Prix. It was a two-door car, but it had seats in the back, and the only way that you could get in the back, you had to let the front seat up. So she was coming to the car. She had the box in her hand, and I saw her. So I reached over and I grabbed the seat, and I leaned the seat up for her to, just helping her out to allow her to put the box in the back. She just kind of went off on me like, "What do you think? I'm helpless? What do you think? Like I mean, like she didn't really need my help, and that and that's just one incident. But I remember seeing this post on Instagram where they asked the question, "What is the most hurtful thing someone has ever said to you?" And I read through some of the comments, and they were tragic. I mean, just like stuff you couldn't believe. Like, I wish you had died at birth. I wish you were like so and so. You ain't worth blank. I mean, just on and on and on. And my comment was, the most hurtful thing anybody could say to me was, "I don't need your help." But here's why. Uh, in order for somebody to have to say that to me, number one, I have to care enough about them to observe whatever they're doing. Number two, I have to believe that I can help in whatever they're doing because I paid attention and I have some level of assistance. Then number three, I offer that assistance to you. Now, after those steps, after I've gone through all of that process, and then I offer help, and for there to be I don't need your help, to me, and in fact, that's the most hurtful thing. And like I said, going back even to that situation, in fact, with my mom, I mean, I see you're coming to the car. You got a box in your hand. I'm trying to help you out. I'm trying to make it easier, in fact, for you to put in the car. And then, for you to go off of me like that, it was kind of like, I really don't understand. Why was this so hard for you to receive some help unless you had some issues, which that could have been the case, but I just know how it impacted and affected me.
Okay, so it's interesting you are bringing that up about help, and your focus on that was more of your mother than it was for you. I don't know if you recognize that or not, but you were focusing on what she was doing and how she was doing what she was doing, and then it made you question maybe what it was for her. So I want you to just sit with that for a moment. Now, that was, you said you were a teenager, and your desire in that moment as a teenager was to help your mother. Just sit with that, and it may be helpful to close your eyes to do it.
Okay.
Okay? So when you close your eyes and you just sit and you seek inside your mind, go back as far as you're able to go back to when it was the very first time that you felt that you had to step in and be the hero, when you had to step in and help, when you had to do that, the very first time that you felt that. And the reason I'm saying close your eyes is so that way you don't have the distractions of anything visual out in front of you, that you could just close your eyes and
Right.
sit and seek inside yourself and allow your body to tell you when you first felt the need to help, the first time you felt, I've got to take care of this situation. Whenever that first time you felt that, just go back to that feeling, the first time you felt that. Now, what you may experience in feeling that is that you are in a shadowy place, in that you're seeking, it's dark where you're seeking, because there's going to be that version of you that first felt that. And what we're doing right now is we are allowing you, the Sakoni today, to just go and find the Sakoni that first felt that feeling, that first felt the feeling of, I want to help. I want to solve this. I want to take care of this person. It's going to go back most likely to a person that was in a situation that you recognize they needed some help. They needed assistance. They needed someone, and you just happened to be there, and you wanted to give them that. Maybe you were so small you weren't able to give them that, but you felt it, and it stayed in your body, and that little child is there. Did you find him yet?
I did. I found it.
You did. Okay, you found him. Now, I want you to keep closing your eyes because I want you to be able to, you found him. I want you to just focus on him. What's his age, Sakoni?
6.
6. Okay. Is he still sitting in the dark?
No, he's not.
Okay.
Sitting.
So,
He's sitting on the couch,
okay.
watching his mother sit at the table, go through bills.
Okay. Now, you're watching him watch your mother in that moment. What is he experiencing your mother doing at that time? He's
No,
watching her go through bills. Is she talking about the bills? Is she using her body in some kind of way to express something about the bills? And he's taking all that information in. And what is he seeing with her? And what is that stirring in his emotions watching her in that moment? What's his body doing in that moment watching her?
well, he's seeing her stress, and he's also, like wanting to, like, relieve that stress from her.
Okay, and when you say he's seeing her stressed and he's wanting to relieve that stress, what's that feeling feel like? Is it a feeling of sadness? Is it a feeling of helplessness? Is it a feeling of powerlessness? Is it what is the feeling he's feeling?
He's feeling helpless.
He's feeling helpless. Okay.
Yeah,
Now, are you able to sit next to him on the couch?
yeah,
Does he know that you're there? Okay. So have a moment and just go sit with little Sakoni, the 6-year-old Sakoni that's feeling helpless because he's watching his mother struggling and stressed over bills. And he knows he doesn't have the money to pay the bills. He's not able to protect her from what she's feeling in the moment. Can you just sit with him, acknowledge that he's there with you, and you are there with him? Can you just go sit with him? Okay. Now, with him, I want you to let him know how much you love him and
yeah,
how much you love him and how proud of you. I mean, how proud you are of him in that moment because he's so willing. He's so willing to help his mother. He's so willing to help her. He's so willing to calm her nerves, to just let her know that everything will be okay. And if he had a way to help her, he would. If he had the money to pay the bills, he would. Will you just let him know that you love him and how proud of him that you are?
yeah. I've actually done this exercise, and I have done that. So yeah,
So this is so one of the reasons Sakoni today and Sakoni as a teenager had the desire to lift the seat and give her the room to move her package is because 6-year-old Sakoni felt helpless and powerless. He didn't know what to do for her. So probably from 6, moving all the way forward, starting with your mother in the home, you were finding all kinds of ways to help her and to make sure she didn't have as much stress as possible.
right.
And her in those moments of not being able to meet her needs or whenever something would show up, it made her feel helpless too. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would.
And that's the reason why that you may have triggered a trauma when you lifted the seat and she was like, what, you think that I'm helpless? Right? Her response to you. So she may
So
have
I
had
triggered a
moments.
trauma in her.
Yes.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
so one of the things that happens is we in our relating to our adult activities and things like that, you all you were doing was being considerate, going back to you wanted to help your mother when you were 6, and in some point of her life before, it could have been before you were even born, we
Right,
don't know, there may
right.
have been situations where she felt helpless, powerless over whatever showed up, And when somebody, and it could be that when you were really, really small, it didn't bother her. It may not have triggered her. But at a certain point as a teenager, maybe you might have reminded her, or the situation may have reminded her of whatever trauma, and she
Right.
reacted. Sure, what she said, you don't believe is a response, right? You feel it
Right.
was a reaction.
Right.
So, like that exercise of identifying the first time
Mhm.
a feeling you, a persistent feeling in you, identifying the first time you have that feeling allows you to be able to comfort the child that was wounded in that moment. Now, that trauma wasn't something that was happening to him, but he witnessed somebody he loves and cares about going
Right.
through, and not being able to meet your needs can be a trauma,
Right.
especially if it happens over and over and over. Your nervous system is never able to calm down and be at peace with itself. You're always on high alert. You're
Right.
always, you there's an extra flood of cortisol, there's an extra flood of adrenaline going on throughout your body. You're not calm. There's difficulty sleeping, inability to be able to meet your needs just causes so much turmoil. If ever you've experienced that at all, you know what that's like. And so it's like you want to make sure that going back to the very first time, and you should see, like you said, our bodies have muscle memory. And that muscle memory also includes how emotions work, and emotions stay stuck in the body.
Right.
Trauma
The body keeps
and
the
trauma
score.
related, your body keeps the score. Yes, your body remembers. Trauma affects your hormones and brain chemicals to release. That's what we feel, is the flood of those chemicals and hormones in our body, and it locks into our system. And once it locks into our system, when something like that shows up again, our bodies remember, subconsciously will remember that, and
Well, let
we'll
me ask
go
you a question.
back to, yes.
Is trauma transferable? And the reason that I asked that question is because, okay, based on what you just said, and I believe again that me helping her, didn't didn't warrant that type of response. But she had a reaction,
Yes.
because of fact whatever trauma she had, and so her reaction to me helping her
Yes.
caused a traumatic event for me. So I
Yes.
guess my question is: so is trauma transferable?
Well, when you say transferable, that's the concept of hurt people.
Right.
So
Exactly.
in her reactive state, when she was when her state was disrupted and the trauma reaction showed up, in that reaction, it caused you a trauma. So it does appear as if it may be transferable. However, it isn't that it's transferable as in she's consciously projecting that onto you. It was just in
Mhm.
that state, out of a reaction, it prompted a, a rooted situation to you that you can go back to and recognize even all these years later. So it isn't
Right.
that it's transferable in the sense that, I'm giving this to you. However, there are hurt people that will continue the cycle of hurting, and that's usually because they've not addressed their own wounds. And so
Right.
then it does look as if it is transferable, but it's just really a cycle being prolonged from one individual into the next individual, not in that it's a transference, but just a continuation of a cycle. So it's in the same way that if you have an abusive parent, and that abusive parent abuses the child, and the child doesn't fully have the coping skills and the mechanisms to recognize the abuse and dissolve it within themselves. And what they
Right.
do is they continue the cycle of the abuse. It isn't
Okay.
something that they may consciously do, but they fall into a pattern because that pattern is so rooted in them, and it's a deep-seated, deep-rooted programming within them. It's
Okay.
it's it's something that will require a person to actually recognize it and put in the effort to not only recognize it and be fully aware of what is going on, then put in the effort to release themselves of that state and to not
Okay.
repeat that cycle. So
Okay.
your mother wasn't consciously trying to put a trauma, transfer trauma to you
Right.
in her
Right.
reactive state. That happened with you. Now, because you made yourself aware, you decided, I'm going to be aware and be as whole as possible. You're already whole in the sense that we were all born whole and we are bent a lot, but we don't want to bend so much to where we're broken, right? Because that goes into a whole nother dark section of life. But we want to be
Right.
able to address things, and awareness is key in addressing things because that's what brings all thoughts into the frontal lobe and conscious thinking. And you know, then how am I going to work on this? Or what do I need to do to work on this? Then that puts you into the programming, which is in the subconscious mind. And then that
Okay.
is where you need to do the uninstallation of that, whatever it is. So that way you can have the room like old storage shed in the backyard. It is now, it's not useful anymore. It's got
Right.
leaks, it's, rain's coming in, the environment's coming in, and all of that is happening. So we're going to tear it down and remove it. That's uninstallation of previous programming, whatever the previous programming is, trauma,
Right.
limiting beliefs, negative
Right.
thinking, negative self-talk, whatever it is, you want to remove that. However, when you remove it, you are now, the vacuum law applies, which is there's a space to fill. If you do not do the work to fill it with the programming you desire to have in its place, something else is just going to show up subconsciously, just fill it because it says, oh,
Right.
we have space. It's going to fill it.
Well, listen, we have to hear another word from our sponsor, so we're going to do that right now. And then we'll be right back for you to tell people how they can contact you. Hold on for 1 second.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable. It is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal or choose Saconi Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
And again, we want to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring our podcast. And I'm telling you, they have been nothing but a gem to actually come alongside of us and help get the word out. And again, start the conversation, not end it. So, Teri, if somebody wanted to contact you, follow you, see what you got going on, how would they do that?
Well, you guys can jump on. I'm on Instagram at I am Teri, Teri, more, Moore. You can just drop
Mhm.
me a DM, drop me a direct message, and then we can start a conversation and see what it looks like from there. But yes,
Okay.
keep
All
it.
right. So, are there any last words that you have for our audience?
I just want to say for all of you tuning in and all of you jumping on the replay, no matter what situation you are going through, you are whole and enough all on your own. Okay? So just know that no matter what situations you have faced, you're on the other side of facing those situations. Maybe you face them like this, okay? Maybe you face them with your eyes wide open. Nonetheless, whatever you've gone through, you're on the other side of it right now, and you're whole all on your own. And your healing journey is your own, and no one is here to say it's right, wrong, or anything like that. You know what resonates for you, and you do what's best for you always. Because at
Right.
the end of the day, you are your number one priority, and taking care of you is fundamental because you matter. You matter to you, and you matter to
All right.
someone else out there. So
All right.
you're all,
Well, thank you.
oh,
Well, thank you so much for actually sharing that information with us. And before I get out of here, I do want to let people know that, of course, those who have been following me for some time, you also know that I do personal development and leadership development. So I've started in all of my shows with my sizzle reel to help you understand who Saucony Prince is. So we'll talk to you next time. Well, my name is Saucony Prince of SauconyPrince.com, where we make motivation personal by introducing you to yourself. I'm a motivational speaker, a trainer, and a coach. I'm also an author. I help people in the area of personal development and leadership development because I believe that you can't lead others until you learn how to lead yourself. But once you learn how to lead yourself, the next logical step is that you lead other people.
Saucony Prince is the best keynote I've ever seen.
He really encouraged me so much.
He has this ability of seeing in people what they don't see in themselves.
He was so confident. When he was coming to the stage, you could see like, wow, this is a lion.
Any actor that's going for a role, they do a case study. If I'm going to be a fry cook, I go to a restaurant and watch people that are fry cooks. If I'm going to be a mob boss, I go and, well, maybe not go to with a mob, but you take some notes as to what they do. Our children are watching. What can they reference when they step into our shoes?
I do what I do because I believe that people have truly yet to understand their purpose. Once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. But until you know who you are, anything can. So my goal is to really help people to understand their purpose and their calling. And oftentimes they have the answers themselves, but they're not asking the right questions. So I help people to get to that place to where they look at themselves, they step back and they see how they've been a help to those around them and what really drives them. And from that, they really understand the value of it. They learn to value their value and see what value their value brings. Because a lot of people, they have yet to do that.
Until you know who you are, anything can stop you. But once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. I want you to understand that you are blessed. That you are blessed to be a blessing. That there is somebody looking up to you. They're looking at you. Don't ever forget that. Because if you ever do, you're going to leave them without a mind.
I've learned so much and I've experienced a lot of interactions with people.
The practical approach, like you can't just sit down there, you have to walk up to an opportunity. Sometimes you have to grab the opportunity. Sometimes you have to fight for the opportunity. There's so much life lessons.
I think from today onwards, I'll stretch out and reach to higher levels.